Edition number 24 of the Sunday Morning Ride. I think it's 24. 24 it is. Edition number 24 of the Sunday Morning Ride. We do have a new sponsor for these spring editions of the Sunday Morning Ride. Ardent Mills is a wheat flour mill in Lake City, Minnesota. It's at that big, tall building right in the center of town. Pretty sure it's taller than anything Ag Partners has. So maybe Ag Partners should step up their game. Yeah. They have got locations all across the country. The two in Minnesota would be Lake City and Hastings, but mainly the most important thing about Arden Mills is like they build their team locally, right? They've got a lot of former wrestlers that have came through from maybe Lake City, Plainview, Elgin Millvilles, and Broda Mazeppa. And everyone says wrestlers make the best workers. So if you're a former wrestler or you've got family or friends in the area you think would be good team members, have them reach out to Arden Mills because they've got all sorts of different job positions from transport, maintenance, all that different stuff. Wrestlers make the best workers. Listen to some of these last names that have came through Ardent Mills. Bayer, oh my gosh. Majuris, oh my goodness. That just sends chills down my spine. Clinworth, anybody remember the name Clinworth? That's a pretty damn good wrestling name. File Sticker, Murray, the list goes on and on. So if you're looking for a job, somebody who is, check out Arden Mills. And we are happy to have them as our spring sponsor, the Sunday Morning Ride. This edition, number 24, I guess this is our first D1 NCAA finalist. This is Brett Pfarr, graduate of Sueur Henderson. He was a high school state champion at Sueur back in the day, made the state finals a handful of times. It's like a 5-time state entrant or something like that for the Giants. Made the jump from small school Sueur Henderson up to the University of Minnesota and made it, frankly, pretty seamlessly. He had a lot of success in his freshman year as a redshirt freshman. He had even more success and then went on to become a 2-time All-American and an NCAA finalist. He wrestled Jaden Cox in the 2017 D1 finals. You probably remember some of those good battles he had with Jaden Cox, but he had Brett was top 20 in career wins at the University of Minnesota when it was all said and done. And when you talk about local kids going from small schools to the D1 path, the University of Minnesota, Brett should be one of the first success stories that pops into your mind. And then after his career at the U of M, he did some other wrestling related stuff, senior level wrestling. He wrestled in the team trials and some of that stuff in 2020 or 2021. But we'll get into that. He's wrestled some pretty elite guys. He's pretty elite himself. And if you're listening on the podcast, I also made this available as a YouTube video because I had a bunch of, ladies that wanted to see and feel Brett. Good for Brett. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Brett Pfarr.
It is. So what have you been up to these days? Because I ran into you down in Rochester at the Min USA Folk Style State. It looked like you were wearing some Forest Lake gear.
hmm Yeah, so I'm self-employed and I do some property management with Gordy Morgan, and he's in the Forest Lake community, and he's got three grandsons that wrestle for their program. So 4 years ago, one of my old college teammates, Alec Ortiz, moved to Colorado and they needed a new coach. So Gordy got me to get in. I was thinking maybe it'd be like one night a week, maybe two nights, and then maybe like five tournaments in the year, but I ended up getting full in, and it's my fourth. I just my finished up my fourth year coaching there for their folk style program, and yeah, it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday nights, and then usually a weekend tournament almost every weekend from December all the way up to the state tournament, Min USA state tournament in the middle of March.
Okay.
So I'm full in on it, and then I'm doing their freestyle Greco program right now, which is a short season, and we started 2 weeks ago, and we'll finish up the first weekend of May with the Minusa Freestyle Greco State.
Sure. Do you feel like you have a preference of which style you like to coach most?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the folk style season gets to be quite the it's extensive. We start the first weekend or the first week of November for these youth kids, and then we go to the middle of March. I mean, it's literally longer than the high school season and almost as long as the collegiate season. So it's
Yeah.
like it's to be long towards the kids to get kind of burnt out, and you're almost running out of technique to show by the end of it. So I do
Sure.
like freestyle and Greco because it kind of freshens it up. It's a short season. There's less pressure on the kids. We just want them to try something new and have fun. So yeah, I mean I like all the styles, but I think coaching freestyle Greco is a nice way to break it up.
Sure. And then, I mean, just the way you wrestled, like that kind of meshes well with freestyle, doesn't it? You were the type of guy, like you were always trying to score points. You were taking a lot of shots on the feet. That's stylistically probably a decent fit for you.
Yeah, I mean, I always stress to, young athletes, kids that are nervous to wrestle freestyle and Greco. It's like, well, you have to get more efficient in your attacks and to be able to get in and
Yeah.
score quick and without getting, and then freestyle, you give up exposure if you go underneath someone and they hit you in a front head roll or whatever. So it really makes you a better offensive folk style wrestler. And then to tie it in, like I did a lot of Greco growing up too. I used to go up to the Augsburg practices, for cadets and juniors, like Mondays and Wednesdays. One was freestyle, one was Greco. And Coach Dan Chandler was the coach for Storm, and he still kind of is. And he was doing at that time, he was also doing the stuff for the cadets and juniors. So I learned my 2-on-1 from, well, Dan Chandler, and also for all the Section 1 fans out there, Coach Big Jim Richardson.
There it is,
He
the
taught me
unit.
the unit. Yeah, he taught me, he calls it the chicken bone. He says, you get on, or the chicken wing, you get on that thing and you just marinate it and push and pull. And you just marinate it till it softens up and then you score. So, um, I went to my 2-on-1 a lot, especially when I got to college. I'm not the quickest guy or the strongest guy, but if I could, and I got grip, so if I could get on your wrist and get to a Russian tie and then, push even like a Greco and then set it up and pull it, shoot my single leg or do an inside trip or, yeah, like, so that was a big offensive attack for me. And so that was the way that Greco really helped my folk style wrestling as a high school wrestler and as a collegiate wrestler.
Were you a pretty early kid into freestyle and Greco, or were you somebody that got into that later?
So we actually got in early because, I graduated high school in 2012. I think Pinnacle, like they were kind of starting in like 2006, 2007. So that was like really the only real club we had in Minnesota. And I wasn't going to it. I'm from Sueur, Minnesota. I'm about an hour and 15 from the metro. But we were lucky to have Dan Zilverberg, who was the
Sure.
Zilverberg family.
Yep.
They all rep Dan, Pat, and Larry wrestled at the University of Minnesota. Dan, since I was born, he was living in Belle Plaine. He's got two boys, Luke and Tyler, that wrestled for Scott West. So he would had the Ghost Rider Wrestling Club before there was really wrestling clubs, and it was just because Dan loved wrestling and loved to coach. I mean, we weren't paying to go there; we would just show up Sunday nights, year round, and then he was also we'd had 2 or 3 freestyle Greco practices a week during the freestyle Greco season. So I got a lot of high level, exposure to high level coaching and technique just because I'm fortunate to have, a go for all American just the town over from us in Belle Plaine.
Sure. And that did Ghost Rider, did that kind of dissolve when his boys came through? Is it?
So it's still hanging in a little bit there. You got Al and David Flynn. Uh, David was a national champion for Augsburg. He's a couple
Yep.
years younger than I am. So Al kind of took it because actually both of Dan's Luke, Dan Silverberg's boy, Luke Silverberg was an All-American at South Dakota State, and I believe he's still on the coaching staff there. And
Okay.
Tyler's living out there too. So Dan moved out of Belle Plaine about 3 years ago, and Al kind of took the reins on the Ghost Rider Wrestling Club. So they're still there. They're a little bit smaller. I think Al is trying to kind of phase out, and David's kind of taking over the program. He's doing
Okay.
most of the youth coaching there. So it's still alive, but isn't quite not flourishing like it was when we were coming through.
Sure. I mean, you get all these like the pinnacles and the summits now, and it's like
Mhm.
it's hard to compete with that because there's such high level coaching there, and kids are coming
Mhm.
from so far now. Like I live over an hour southeast of the Twin Cities, and we got
Yeah.
kids that are driving a long ways just to go up there and, get
Oh,
coaching
yeah.
from some of these guys.
Yeah. And we have a lot of clubs in the metro and even the greater Minnesota. And I think when you have numbers like at the youth level, because there's a lot of youth wrestlers, you can have clubs all over the state, but then as you start, as you get into high school age kids, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, they kind of start dwindling out. You just lose numbers
Yeah.
naturally in any sport. So
Well,
then it is like, like you have to start driving to get to the partners, and you're right, the coaching too, but it's just you need kids that are very competitive that you can wrestle against and who will challenge you. So I think that's what happens is it
yeah.
just as you get older and the numbers go down, it's like you got to start congregating together from further distances to make it work.
Yeah. Yep. I definitely agree with that. You feel like you're enjoying youth wrestling because I mean it's definitely very different, right?
Yeah.
You got to meet your
Yeah.
athletes on a different level and then parents are
Yeah.
a little bit more involved. But I mean, it's got to be kind of a passion project for you too, I bet, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny. Like I always kept saying it's just youth wrestling, and like everyone's getting wound up. But then, like year four, it's like, wow, I'm kind of getting really invested because I've coached a lot of these kids for 4 years now, and like I know them very well and their families, and I care about them, and I really want them to succeed. So I get worked up. It's like I'm like yelling, I'm coaching at the kids state this, a couple of weeks ago, and I'm yelling my head off, technique at a kid so that they'll hit the move and win the match. And again, it's just a youth match, but it gets pretty passionate,
Yeah.
and it is fun to see it because now it's like, I mean, our one of the dads, he's kind of involved with the team wrestling and does the organizing. He's all about stats. So like the first year I was there coaching, we had 5 kids win medals at the Minusa State tournament, and this year we had 17. So over those, and it was like 5, 14, 15, 17. So it's just like it's seeing the progress of the club and the way these kids are developing. And yeah, I mean that's what I really take pride in, is to see these kids getting better and having fun still. And my goal, I tell them all the time, is just like I want you to have good fundamental technique, wrestle hard, have fun, learn in the sport, and stay and like it enough to keep doing it into middle school and high school. And I can set them up to the Forest Lake coaches up at those levels, and to give them really sound and fundamentally
Yeah.
structured kids that will be good, turn into great wrestlers for them.
I think those Forest Lake coaches, they're gonna maybe owe you a couple dinners or something.
Yeah,
Hey,
I think
you know?
definitely.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I was involved with high school coaching for a few years, and it's like when you get these kids who are have solid fundamentals and they've got a good
Mm,
head on their shoulders and they've fallen in love with the sport because their coaches are treating them right and their parents are supporting them and encouraging to do
mm,
things that they love. That's just such a blessing as a middle school coach, a junior high coach, a high
yeah.
school coach to get a kid like that.
100%. And I was talking to Kevin LaValle yesterday, and it's like, yeah, you mean you were to build a really successful program, you need to have those a good feeder program at the youth level, right? Setting those kids
Yeah,
that are developed up to you. But at the same time, even Kevin's like, you gotta take every kid that comes into the room, if they're first year wrestler and they're a 7th grader, or they're a 10th grader who's a good football player and walks in for the first day of practice. And it's like it's like, yeah, I know it's tough to start at square one with them, but it's like at the high school level, it's like, you got to fill 13 weights and you need every
right.
body possible.
You
So it's
do.
like, it is a mixture. Like, yeah, it's awesome to have kids that are developed come right into your or right into your middle school or high school program and be able to compete and show them high level technique. But then you need that kid that's like a 10th grader who's 170 pounds and is a good running back. And then you teach him a double leg and a stand up and a half Nelson, and he can win 75% of the matches for you and
Right.
be a state place entrant. So yeah, there's a role for everyone on the team and in the sport. So that's a great thing about it.
Exactly. Wrestling is not one of those sports where we can be picky. We can't say you got to
Yeah.
have a 40-inch vertical and you got to have a run a 4-4
Yeah.
because I mean, that's just, that's not wrestling. So,
Yeah, exactly. We really don't have any metrics besides just how they compete against each other. And
right.
yeah, and again, you don't have to be the most athletic to be a great wrestler, which is I think what's enticing for a lot of people, is that
Yep.
you can find success in a sport with through other avenues of just, hard work or grittiness or, technique, the technical aspect. So it's kind of levels the playing field. Whereas if you want to be a football player and play college ball or go in the NFL, it's like you need those things that if you don't have them, they're not inherent. You're good luck.
You could have made a basketball player, Brett. What are you,
Yeah,
6'2"?
I'm 6'2". I mean, I got the height, but I don't got the jumps, or I don't got nothing. I got no ups or anything like that. I got a grip, and I wrestle. I work really hard. So
Keep
wrestling is the
keep
sport I fell into.
Yeah, you keep working on the vertical, maybe. You never
I
know.
will. I'll let you know when it goes up like an inch or something.
Yeah. So this spring, I've been doing a bunch of exit interviews with Section 1 seniors, and what they
Hmm.
keep telling me is like their favorite memories in wrestling so far. And keep in mind, a lot of these guys are going to go and wrestle college, wherever that is, but a
Hmm.
lot of them are telling me like the NYWA team tournaments or Min USA team stuff as like a fourth, fifth, sixth grader. That's some of the most fun they've ever had in wrestling.
Hmm.
And now you kind of get to see that angle as a coach. But I mean, you've wrestled in college too, you've done senior level circuit stuff. Where have you kind of had the most fun with wrestling? I guess you've coached now
Oh,
too.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember, we always did NYWA when I was growing up because we were a small town. Yeah, and I loved it when I was a fifth and sixth grader. We had a pretty solid team, so I still have those memories of wrestling at the Civic Center, and loving it.
Sure.
And I enjoyed every aspect of my career. High school, we had some really good teams, and we took section twice in the section as a team. We
Yeah.
lost to um, Medelia Truman when I was in eighth grade, and I was on the varsity. And then as a junior, we had a really good team. We lost to Lake Crystal, so
Yeah.
we were really close to getting it done. But the other thing that I was proud about for Sueur Henderson is we had a state champ back in like the '60s, Pete Straub, and then we didn't have another state champion until my older brother Matthew won it in 2008. And then we went on a 6 or 7 year run where we had a state champion at least Sueur every year. It went my brother Matthew, then it went Jason Sunderman, and then Josh Willert was a two-time state champ. So there's
Willard.
4 years.
Yes. Yep.
And then I was the state champ for that's five. And then Austin Anley went back to back, I think 10th grade and 11th grade.
Yep.
So that was 7 years. And then he actually lost to Cameron Sikora his
Yep.
senior year. And a good match, very good match. So yeah, we had a great program, and we were doing all the things like all these guys that were going in the van, jumping into, carpooling up to dance practices at the Ghost Rider Wrestling Club, or we'd come up to the storm practices at Augsburg Mondays and Wednesdays. And then even my shed, on the farm, we had a mat out there. We were training during the folk style season. We were training out there. I mean, I was training out there every day, but those guys would be out there once a day or like 5 times a week, and we'd be doing an extra lift or wrestle. So everyone was bought into it, and we were seeing the progress and development. So that was awesome.
Like
But
in a
I would say,
machine shed? You had your mat rolled out in a
yeah,
machine shed?
yeah. Have you never heard this, Logan, or do you?
I think I've caught wind of it. It sounds
Yeah, yeah,
familiar.
yeah. You also said so when I was in college, the Gopher, the media production team, they came down and they visited, and they did a video of it. So I'll have to send it to you afterwards. But yeah, we had them on we got two farms where my dad grew up and where my mom grew up. We all grew up on we call it the Riley farm because that's where my mom's maiden name.
Yep.
So we had a machine shed that my grandfather used to work on, the combine and tractors and all the farm
Out,
equipment in
outside of
there.
Sueur, Henderson?
Outside of yeah, we're
Outside
actually
of
in Sibley
Sueur.
Counter.
Okay.
So we're actually we're only like 7 miles from Arlington, which is Sibley East. But we're about 12 miles out of Lesueur, but we went to St. Anne's, which was a private Catholic school in Lesueur. So
Okay.
that's how we got there. And then we just stayed there through the rest of our um, academic middle school and high
So
school.
you guys were actually you lived in the Sibley East District.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I think we did. And then I think my
The
mom and dad had to
Pfarr's
call
made open and rolling cool. You guys are the ones that
the
started it.
You heard it here first. Well, it was all because they want us to go to get our that Catholic elementary education,
Right.
Lesueur. And
Right.
I don't think they were going to make they weren't going to come out and pick us up. And my dad called them up and they told them like, you're going to come get our kids. So they had to drive another mile or 2 miles and pick us up. So we were always the furthest on the bus route. We were the furthest kids to get. I mean, it took us an hour to get into school and an hour to get home, no matter how you drove it. So,
Oh my
so we had a
gosh, that's
big,
freaking
yeah.
funny.
But yeah, we had my dad took that machine shed when my older brother Matthew, he's 4 years older than me, and started like just you got a mat, laid it out, and then you got a wood burning stove that could burn wood pellets or corn. So we would actually have a corn burning stove in our shop to heat it. And then my dad started buying just some different weight equipment, a couple, a squat rack, a bench press, and some barbells and dumbbells and all that kind of stuff. And we just made it work.
That is legendary. We have a saying in Goodhue because we didn't actually have a wrestling room until a handful of years ago. We had like an old cafeteria where we would
Mhm.
roll out all the mats, and our
Yep.
saying was cafeteria trained, or excuse me, gym one, lunchroom trained. You guys would be
Yeah.
like machine shed trained.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We were,
Print the
um, so
shirts.
So we would like, and it was fun because we would have all of my Sueur teammates and friends come out, but then we'd have like Nathan Rose and all those guys from Sibley
Yeah.
East come out and train, and those guys that are the Bates family that was that about my age, and then St. Peter kids would come from New Ulm and stuff like that. So we were just again not really a club, but kids we were coming from 30, 40 miles to come wrestle. And it didn't matter where you were from. You just, if you wanted to get better and come and train, we had a spot.
That is pretty sweet. Do you guys leave the
Yeah.
tractors in there when you're wrestling or didn't have room? Just
No, no
weight
room. It's
equipment and
never
mats.
pretty much. I don't have any really many memories of it being like a machine shop. It's always to me been the wrestling shed. So
That is
since
awesome.
I was like in third grade, there's been a wrestling mat in there, and there still is.
Sure. And now
So.
Chris is the one taking over the farm, right? Or he's kind of starting to get more involved.
Yeah, so I got my older brother Matthew and then my younger brother Chris who wrestles for the Gophers. And they're both older brother Matthew lives in Arlington. He's got two kids. Chris is currently in Mankato with two kids. And yeah, we're talking about them. They're
Okay.
both trying to move back close to the farm or on the farms. And then I help out as well. I think next week we're probably going to be going if we stay dry. And I'll be in the tractor planning most of the stuff. And we're just going to make it work. So but yeah, there's intentions of both my brothers to make it back to the farm.
Well, they better make sure that wrestling mat doesn't go anywhere.
Oh
Matthew's
yeah, they
kids are going
know.
to need that.
Yeah, they
And
are
and
gonna
did you
need
say
that.
Chris has kids already or not yet?
He's got two
Got two.
girls. He got a 2 year old and a girl born in October. So, but hey, with the way girls wrestling's growing, they're more likely than anything gonna be wrestlers too.
Might have to add on to the machine shed.
Yeah, we might have to extend it out a little bit. Well, Chris
Oh,
has got he's got all kinds of plans on the other farm to put up a huge machine shop with, you know, concrete floors, heated, everything, and he must have enough room to put a wrestling mat and have equipment too. So
sure.
yeah,
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, I
yeah,
remember when I was coaching during COVID, my younger brother was a junior or senior at Goodhue, and like they weren't letting anybody get together for practice or training or anything. So we had to do that exact thing in my uncle's shop. We just like the boat is sitting outside this winter,
Mm.
tractors going outside and in come the mats, and you got to do what you got to do to be the best, I suppose.
oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't take much to get good in wrestling. You just need a place to wrestle. Just throw some
Right.
mats down anywhere, and you got it. So
Right. Right. So I
it
got
just
us distracted. The most fun you've had in wrestling?
oh yeah. I mean, I loved my experience at the University of Minnesota. I mean, everything about it. Come in and being on some really impressive teams with really good wrestlers. Like when I was a freshman, I mean, there was, at the upper weights, it was Logan Sterling at 174, Kevin
Yeah.
Steinhaus at 184, Scott Schiller at 197, and Tony Nelson at heavyweight. I mean, that was like, we used to call it Murderer's Row or Killer's Row because it was one of the best, you know, four weight lineup you could have. And yeah, I just got my butt kicked every day by those guys. I mean, I went weeks without getting a takedown, but it's what I needed to develop. And it was cool to see those guys as wrestlers and leaders and see how hard they trained and try to get as good as they were. So, yeah, so that was great. Just being on the team, even as I didn't start my first 2 years, I did get a couple starts my redshirt freshman year when Castanos had a ACL injury and then the surgery. So I got a few starts
Okay.
that redshirt freshman year. And then yeah, just competing for the Gophers and being at these home duels and being able to compete for the state I grew up in. And Big Tens, NCAA's, all of it was awesome. A few memories that really stick out for me is one of my most one of the most fun duels we ever had was when I was competing, was when my younger brother Chris was at 174 and we were wrestling Wisconsin at home and
Yep.
we were losing to him. It was a bad duel for us. And it came down, it started at 184, wrapped all the way back up to 174 where Chris was at. And he had Ryan Christensen at Wisconsin, who was tough. He was a top 15 kid. And Chris was like 0 and 1 or 0 and 2 against him. And he beat him in that duel to ice it for us and get us the win. And that was one of the most fun duels I ever had. There's a good picture of me and Michael just yelling and flexing and all pumped up. So that's a good memory from my competition days in college.
Your senior year, junior year,
That's a good. I think we were seniors.
seniors. Okay.
Yeah, I believe
That
so.
that's fun, especially when your brother's
Yeah.
involved.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
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 It's always when your brothers wrestle. Like it was tough. Like him being at 174 most his last 2 years is and then when me being at 187, if we went straight up, if you started at 125 and wrestled through heavyweight, then you got to watch your brother wrestle. It was tough. I sometimes I'd have to pull myself back and go into the back room and just like not get too
Sure.
worked up just because, you get all the emotions and the anxieties when your brother is competing. But I would watch him a lot of the time, depending on how it was going. But sometimes I'm like, it's too much. I'm getting too worked up. And I
I think
always
your brother's matches almost matter more than your own, you know?
Oh, 100, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I feel for people who are, for parents of their kids and everyone's like, oh, they're freaking out in the stands and everything. It's like, well, yeah, it's an extension of them. And the hardest part when you're watching your siblings or your children or whoever wrestle or a loved one is that you don't have any control. You feel like helpless. All you can do is sit there and sweat and yell and freak out. When I was competing, I had some nerves and stuff and some
Yeah.
anxiety, but nothing that was crippling. I like to think I competed pretty well and I enjoyed to compete,
Yeah.
but I just knew I knew like I had faith, not that I didn't have faith in anyone else, but it's like, I just knew I was in control of the
Yeah.
match and myself.
Yep.
So like I had something that I could take, do when I was competing. But when my brother was wrestling, it's like, I'm helpless and all I can do is
Hmm.
watch and wish the best. So
Right.
I think that's where most people feel it. It's like you don't have any control. You can only sit there and sweat.
Yep. You're kind of on an
Yeah.
island. You just all you can do is sit and
Yeah,
wait and see what happens. It's
exactly.
nerve-wracking. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, this was between your junior and senior year, but obviously when J Rob got let go, that was just a super
Mm,
weird situation. And you guys
mm,
still put it together and had, you had a really good senior year individually. It was a little bit weird for
mm.
the team, but you guys weathered the situation really well. What was it like wrestling for J Rob? Because like in Minnesota wrestling, he's just like this mythical, legendary
Yeah.
figure and everybody
Yeah.
talks about how hard he works. Like, what was it like wrestling for J Rob?
I love wrestling for Jay. I think
Yeah.
he was a great coach and a mentor for young men. And yeah, like he's just a figurehead. A lot of people didn't like Jay for certain reasons, whether they're athletes or administration and stuff. But I always thought Jay was very fair, with everyone, the way he brought down discipline and that kind of stuff. And then he also, he's just like, he just had like, like that old school like mentality of like training and discipline and like mentorship. Like the way I always described it, like back in the like our parents, if their parents caught them smoking, they'd probably make them smoke a whole pack in the closet until they got sick on it. Like
Right.
that's the kind of discipline Jay was, where it's
Yep.
like he was
Old
all, and
school.
that's kind of the reason why, all the stuff that the follow-up that happened with the incident in 2016 going into 2017 is because he just took care of it in house and he did address all the problems and punished the whole team and us for it. But it was kind of like, I'm gonna do it my way and you guys are gonna feel it, which we did. But that's just how Jay was. And he's very principled, very loyal. He's an Army Ranger. Got that
Yep.
background and that kind of his his training for us like was kind of based off of our Ranger school, like having a what do you like a boot camp, like when you first came to school, your first year, your freshman year, we called them freshman workouts where for the first 3 months, you were up 3, 4 days a week, 5:36, doing the hardest workouts, sprinting workouts, lifting workouts, just really hard things. Because Jay's philosophy with wrestling was like, first, I'm going to make you a man, and then I will make you a wrestler. We all came in as wrestlers, but like
Yeah.
I'm gonna build you down. I'm gonna break you down. I'm gonna build you back up. Once you become a wrestler, hard nosed, and like a Minnesota like mentality of I'm the toughest one out there. Then we'll get you the wrestling, the technique. But first, we got to sift you guys out, figure out who belongs, who doesn't belong, and who's going to stick it out and have that kind of, Minnesota wrestling grittiness and toughness that we had for so many years.
Yeah. I mean, that was the identity of those teams. And I feel like the J-Rob camps, everything I've heard about them, I wasn't built for them. I couldn't have handled them. I would have
Yeah.
waved the white flag, but everybody says
Yeah.
that those were kind of like a smaller dose of that. You get a taste of whether or not you're ready for it.
They were incredibly tough. And I actually my older brother did one. He was actually going to, I think, seventh grade. He was the youngest and the lightest one, and they let him in. And he said he did the 28-day camp in Minneapolis. And he said, toughest 28 days that he had ever done up to that point of his life. And so I actually never did it because I was usually doing freestyle Greco. By the time I was a schoolboy and cadet, I was wrestling, doing like the schoolboy and cadet duels in June, and then in July you got Fargo National. So I was more on that freestyle Greco path.
Yeah.
But all 4 years between my 5 years of wrestling at the University of Minnesota, I did the Jay Robinson camps. And yeah, I loved it too. That was a big part of our success, is because we all did it. So like school was out in May. We come back in June. We did a 14-day camp in Iowa. Then we went out, or 10-day camp in Iowa, went out to Pennsylvania, did a 14-day camp, came back to Minneapolis for a 28-day camp. And then we went to the West Coast, usually Oregon or California, for another 14-day camp. So 66 days of camps. And it was just everyone. It was all your teammates and partners and closest friends and guys from other schools too. So we were coaching. I mean, we're living, breathing, and doing wrestling. It was 3 or 4 workouts a day for the kids. We were putting them through, and then you're trying to lift and do a staff practice. So you're just engulfed in it. So there was no way that you couldn't get better. It's just you were just doing it every day. There was no disappearing for the summer and slacking off. Like we were all together training and competing and pushing each other.
Finding out, I bet, a lot about yourself when you only have wrestling and you only have your buddies that are in the trenches with you. You just probably find out a lot about yourself.
Well, it's a bonding, it's a melding. I mean, my college teammates are still my closest friends, and you see, even though I don't see them for a year or two, it's like no time has passed because you went through that very tough and very difficult, experiences together, and it just forms you. I mean, I'm not in the military. I never have been, so I can't. But I believe it's probably something pretty close to that, where like once you have your band of brothers, it's like that's what it is. So
yeah, I'd imagine so. Yep. Brett, we got about 60 seconds left here. I got one more question for you.
Okay.
You've wrestled on the senior level. You've done some international wrestling, NCAA finals. When do you feel like you were at the best? You were the best wrestler in your career at what point?
That's a good question. I felt like I was really wrestling good my junior and senior year of college. Things were clicking well for me, competing really well. I also did think I was wrestling really well when I got qualified for the 2020 at the US Open, when I got qualified for the 2020 Olympic team trials, which ended up getting bumped back to 21 because of COVID.
Yeah.
But that was a great tournament for me too. Wrestled some really good matches. Lost a close one to Derringer. I beat Aaron Brooks.
David Taylor? You wrestled David Taylor?
I wrestled them at the trials. So this was at the Open. I ended up getting teched out by Taylor. Had a great first period against them, stayed on my 2-on-1, and then kind of got away from it. And then he made me feel silly. I mean, I've never wrestled a person that got me more out of position and got me feeling like a kindergartner again than Taylor. Because next thing you know, my feet are crossed up and he's ankle picking me. I'm like, wow, it's been a while since I felt that out of place.
He's decent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. Hey, Brett, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. I'm going to let you get back to it, but thanks for joining the show and telling a few stories with us. We'll hopefully get to talk wrestling with you again soon.
I appreciate it, Logan. Thanks for having me on.